single managing director or director of the various parastates that I appointed as a consequence of Mr. President's approval, I believe was highly qualified to do the job. I do not subscribe to the view that you have to be a captain in aviation to do a job as an administrator in one of the parastatals. I just don't. I believe very much in public-private sector participation. I believe in people coming in to give their wealth and experience to verify. We may have made mistakes. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you know, we're human. But I tried my best. And again, I go back to the record. Whatever wasn't happening before we got there and ended up, you know, the mess that we were in by the time I went there, and it was a mess. I think we tried our very best with the support of these parastatal chiefs, the directors, and everybody, and the Presidential Implementation Committee to do a good job.
I don't know what was the outcome or the recommendations of the panel. And I was so surprised that despite that, well, I'll get to know the outcome of the panel. You still went on with the project. I'm also aware of the fact that there was a presidential comment for culprits to be punished. Yet, you didn't do anything about it. I'm surprised.
I did a lot about it at great cost to myself, my safety, and also to my reputation. And I'll tell you what happened. When I was intimated of the fact that there were issues to be raised, let me put it like that, about our contract. The first thing that struck me as being strange was the attitude of the contractor himself. Because there was nothing on the ground, and here I am coming to the ministry, and 6.4 billion is out of the account, and there's nothing to show, very little to show. So his attitude was wrong. Then I started receiving petitions and information, and I did what any minister would do, and some wouldn't do. And that is to say, okay, let's set up a committee, give them their independence, let them look into this issue. They came back with a very, very damning report. Some of the things that are being spoken here today was said a long time ago. The report was damning, and they presented it back to me. I did not hold the report. I did not put it in my drawer and lock it away and go running to my priest and say, look, this is very unfortunate, but let's bury it. I didn't do that. I sent it to Mr. President. When I sent it to Mr. President, he minuted that two things. Ensure that the culprits are brought to book, and he also minuted and sent to the relevant security agency. It was at that point that I had to determine precisely where I would send it to. I went back to Mr. President and I said to him, look, this minute what I think we should do is send it to the NSA's office, simply because the NSA will be able to look into this thing deeper and further and be able to take actions on it where necessary. And my reason for doing that is this, because this has to be understood. I discovered later, after they had submitted their report, and after I sent it to Mr. President, that they never discussed anything with the former minister. They didn't call him, they didn't ask him anything. And in my view, I thought that was to a certain extent something that should be of some concern.
Which are fair hearings.
Absolutely, it was fundamental, and as a lawyer maybe we're a little bit more sensitive to that than other people. I felt that was something that we needed to, however...
You're a lawyer colleague.
However distinguished, despite that, I felt that there's no point in saying let's call the Honourable Minister, my distinguished elder colleague, to ask him questions. The best person that can handle this is somebody that presides over the whole security network of this country, that is in a position to call a very strong committee comprising of people from EFCC, the Air Force, every across the board. He can call them and the police and SSS and look into this matter. There was an international dimension to it. There was a security dimension to it. There were all kinds of dimensions to this issue. It wasn't just a matter of possible fraud. It was a much bigger issue. And of course, the tower itself, that whole project was vital to Nigeria. And this comes to your first question, because we had spent 6.4 billion naira on this project. There was nothing more to spend on it. And the worst thing you could have done, the recommendation of the Shehu Yar report was continue the project but probe the issue of due process certification. I believe the NSA's report came to the same conclusion, conclude the project. And I'm glad that I'm told that this administration has acted on that advice and has continued the project just as we did. And they've done 3 out of the 4. But I do accept the fact that, you know, that it's something that some may look at and say, well, you know, why didn't you send it to the FCC? But we have more information than them. And the fact that the professor had not been given the opportunity to state his own case I believe he may have done. When the NSA's report took place, I don't know. But I know the minute they got that at the NSA office, they started working on it. They released their report on June, and this is very important, distinguished senator. They released their report, I believe, June last year. I read it in the papers. You know, that's how I know. And I'm told once they released their report, it was sent to Mr. President, and I'm sure this government is taking the necessary measures, just as the National Assembly is doing, to ensure the matter is looked into.
Thank you very much. My last question.
Paragraph 3 of your memorandum to the President of 18th December 2007, the report which you have commissioned. Are you listening to me? Are you listening to me?
I hear you very clear, and I remember that letter very clearly.
Yes. Can I refresh your memory? And let's remind the co-counsels. All right. Okay. This report suggests, as you're right, this report suggests credible cases of sharp practices, concealment of information, misrepresentation of information and facts, and have truths. Do you still stand by this position?
Mr. Distinguished Senator, of course I stand by it, based on the information I had at the time, and I couldn't but stand by it.
So the report which you have summarized, the paragraph of which I've read to you, states in the, do you have the copy?
Well, you can read it.
Okay. It says that the two beneficiary agencies could not produce their offer or bill of quantities of the project. It is therefore curious how the project was able to get the certificate of due process. While efforts are being made to approach the Office of Due Process for bill of quantities, if any, we are still awaiting for Upscale Communication Nigeria Limited, who promised after a demand about 2 weeks ago to provide separate PQ with price listing for air traffic control and meteorological components from frequenting and Tesla respectively. We are of the opinion that there should have been competitive quotations from at least 3 companies, including the 3 constituents forwarded to the Office of Due Process before the final selection. The total cost of the project, well, I mean, this is your report. The pricing and the procedure of award of this contract did not meet the price standards. 1. And therefore, since it lacked transparency, it was fraudulent.
Distinguished Senator, I stand by everything I wrote in that letter. I also want to say this, that I also believe that it's very important for ministers, when faced with such things, to go to a higher authority and a higher power, especially where it concerns another minister. I did all that I possibly could at great cost to myself. And I send this, and I do accept, and I do believe that there were issues. Now, the NSA went further, and I believe confirmed some of the findings, not all of the findings of the Shehu Yao report. There were some people that were completely cleared by the NSA's report. Okay.
Yes, as a council, you read.
No, Mr. Distinguished Senator, what happened was this. Petitions were sent to me, and what I'm trying to tell you is I relied, that letter you're reading from was based on information that was given by the ER report.
So you agreed with it and then you forwarded it to the President?
Absolutely, yeah.
That you raised the issue that Upscale Communication Nigeria Limited was the person who was given the contract. He never bid it. He had no relationship as to be justified by a power of attorney. As a matter of fact, the document that was produced at the letter date would not suffice to be a power of attorney. And in spite of that, in spite of the fact that there was no privity of contract between the people who were to whom we were paying money and us,
you are correct, and that was the recommendation of the committee of the hour. And the end we had was that 5 crash planes had just crashed. And the control tower, as you are flying into whichever part of the country you're going, is vital. So there was no question of saying, and the President himself didn't say we should stop the contract. What would have happened is we'd still have those terrible things that the professor showed you in our control towers, and we wouldn't be able to get value for money.
if the constituency of the...
In the minutes of Mr. President, he said, Minister of Aviation, the culprit or culprits must be identified and severely punished. When Mr. President, the Chief Executive of Nigeria, made this comment, why didn't you refer your observations to the EFCC?
Thank you, distinguished Senator. Once again, let me explain that my predecessor in office had not been given an opportunity by that committee that I set up to ask him to explain himself to them, and I felt that I would achieve that objective by sending it to the NSA's office. Now, let me explain this, sir. The issue is this, okay? I went back to Mr. President. I said, look, this is the dilemma I face. They have not even interviewed Professor Borishadi. Can I send this to the NSA was for further investigation to confirm the facts? He said the NSA will know what to do. We sent it to him, and he did his report. He concluded his report. He released his report, which was more or less on all fours with this, and that was June last year. Surely, between that time and now, investigations must have continued. I blew the whistle on this thing. I'm the one that exposed it. A great cost to myself. It stand from beginning to end. I knew it, but I didn't have all the details. And I was being extremely careful. But a ministry and committee members of a ministry are not fully equipped to confirm a lot of these things. And, we could have possibly done it like that. But for me, I believe that it was important that he made his case before the committee. Fair hearing issues, sir.
But in a fair assessment, would you consider yourself a better minister than your predecessor? And if so, please, because from your report, you gave a glowing account of what you're able to achieve and so on. Now, if you consider yourself a better minister than your predecessor, can you tell us 3 key performance indicators that made you achieve what you claim to have achieved? And this question is free. You can decline or answer. Thank you.
Distinguished Senator, I have tremendous respect for culture, and unless, of course, we're in a firefight and we're in a state of war, then it's difficult for me to be saying I'm assessing somebody that is older than me, that has been in government for much longer than me. All I can say is that I did my very best when I was there.
Chief Femi Fani Kayode and other stakeholders in the industry have made their submissions to the committee, the report of which the nation awaits when the Senate resumes sitting.